Tom. Vicky says, I just found Thomas Campbell accidentally on Spotify. A lot of people are running into you in a lot of other platforms other than the usual podcasts and Joe Rogan. I was wondering if you've ever studied or read ancient Indian text, which seems aligned with your own experience and your tests.
Well, I've gotten that question many, many times.
Oh,
I've gotten a similar question many times. I have had people at events, when I give events and I talk and I tell them about MBT, and I have people come up and say, Tom, are you a student of the Kabbalah? I've been learning the Kabbalah for the last 2 decades, and you sound just like my teacher. Another one will come up and say, Tom, are you a Zen Buddhist? I've been studying Zen Buddhism for months, and you sound just like a Zen Buddhist. And so on. Almost every, so we call the mystical school, it's the same thing about the Gnostics. It's the same thing about the Sufi. All these mystical schools are mostly the schools that are truly spiritual. Religion has its spiritual side, and it also has its corporate side. And the spiritual side tends to end up in what they call the mystical schools of that religion. So anyway, I've heard that often. I sound like all of those people. I've had any number of people say that I sound like I've been studying Buddhism. I've had any number of people say it sounds like I got my ideas from Taoism. And I've not read extensively in any of those areas. I say there's just one truth, but there's thousands and thousands of paths toward that truth. Now, as I learned and grew, I understood that the Eastern philosophies were more, I was going to say advanced, but that's not true. They're more open about the nature of reality and consciousness, and the connection between the two is more of an open thing talked about in the East than the West. So I did read some of those. I read whatever I could get my hands on, all of them, from the shaman, to the Tibetan Buddhist. And I did find the similarities. And it was nice to have that kind of feedback that is encouraging that you're on the right track. So I'm not wholly removed from the Eastern, philosophical teachings, but I got to where I was going on my own. I didn't follow any master or any guru or any particular philosophy at all. I developed it all on my own, and I did that purposefully, because if you don't get there on your own, then you don't own it. The only way you own it is if you figure it out, if you develop. Now you can get ideas, and your intellect can be filled in by other people's paths and other people's experience and other people's knowledge. But if it's not your experience, it's not your truth. So if you want it to be your truth, it has to also be your experience, which means you need to find out for yourself, not just, oh, I read this in a book, so that's the way it is. I've never accepted that. I've always had to experience it myself. So yes, many of the things I say reflect the same wisdom that has been developed, 2,500 years ago. The Buddha said a lot of the same things that I say, but basically we learned them from the same source. We got educated from the same source. And there's a lot of other people that also are very knowledgeable and have been educated from that very same source. Through all the ages, in all countries, in all places, there are people who have taken the time to understand the nature of the reality that they're living in. And you have to do that through mind. You don't do that through the intellect. You can memorize every word in the holy text and every word in MBT and every word that any prophet or religious person said. But memorizing all the words won't give you any, it'll let you be much better at the cocktail chatter when everybody's talking about it. but it won't really help you evolve. It won't help you grow. That has to be an inside job, something you do on your own. So yes, I sound an awful lot like other people who have also discovered for themselves the same things I have. And this has happened for many thousands of years. People have found the truth. I'm not like the first person came up with the truth, but I'm so far the first person that has derived quantum physics from it, because that's my time in my space. The Buddha was in his time, in his space, and he said things that were meaningful and significant to the people in his time and space. He didn't say that this was a virtual reality. He said it was an illusion. Well, I think those two are about the same. When I say it's a virtual reality, I'm meaning the same thing that he did when he said it was an illusion. This isn't the real game. The real game is the non-physical one, the game that's going on in consciousness in your mind. That's the real game. The game outside world is just an illusion to give us some experiences that we need to make choices about. So anyway, yes, I do resemble all those people, and all those people resemble me, because there is only one truth, and there's thousands of people who have gotten to that truth thousands of different ways.
And when you speak of source in these mystical traditions, you've labeled that in your My Big TOE theory, the larger consciousness system. Is that right? And this is how you have developed your theory that now not only speaks of this source and the things you've experienced, but has derived quantum physics.
Yeah, sure. I call it the larger consciousness system. I start with the premise that consciousness is fundamental. And that's not an assumption I make. I derive that consciousness is fundamental. And everything is then derived from consciousness, including this reality we call the physical universe is derived from consciousness, including physics and chemistry and biology and theology and philosophy. All of those go back to the very most fundamental tenets, and it's all the nature of consciousness, the nature of this reality, evolving as consciousness must evolve toward lower entropy, which means toward love. So that's my own way of saying it, is developed for not for the right brain people who intuit their way through life, but my books are for the left brain people who don't have an on ramp. The right brain people have lots of on ramps. There's lots of books and things written for them, because it's not logic, it's poetry, it's theology, it's something to believe in. And I write my book for the left brainers who need logical process. This makes sense. This answers questions. This is science. So in my choice of words, I talk about the larger consciousness system, but the people in religion call that system God. They talk about God, but it turns out that the larger conscious system and God are both the same thing, just from different points of view. It's been an interesting journey. You know, I started this journey, like most physicists, as a agnostic or an atheist, I guess, when I was younger, then an agnostic, with the idea that nobody can really tell. And then I realized that you could tell. There were things that you could learn and understand, and that a lot of the things that I had put down as being, you know, mushy-headed people trying to make themselves feel better actually were fundamental truths. And so I had to
That
eat
was a
some
shock
crow.
to you.
Yeah, I had
You
to eat
had
some
to
crow
laugh at
there.
yourself.
I
And
did.
that's a very good sign when
Yeah,
you can laugh at yourself.
I laughed at that. All these things that I've been saying, yeah, people in religion, you know, it's a weak minds just trying to pacify themselves and make themselves feel better. And then I find out that most of the fundamental truths in religion really are fundamental truths. That's the way it is. But all the dogma and the creeds and the other stuff is just not pertinent. That's what humans have added to it for their own reasons. But most of the big religions, you know, the Buddhism and Taoism and Christianity and the Muslim world, you know, they all have fundamental truths at their base. It's just the way it is. That makes sense, and it works. But yes, larger consciousness system is the source of all. We are just chips off that block. We're made in its image, if you want to use a Christian term. That's true. We're just pieces of consciousness of that larger system. And all those old things that you heard of, we're all one. Well, that sounds good, but what does that mean? Well, it's true. We are. We're all pieces of a larger consciousness system. So a lot of those sayings that, the only thing we need is love. Love is the answer. It turns out that's true.
True.
And there's a logical reason for it. It has to do with lowering entropy in social systems. And you can get there through logic as well as just kind of intuiting it as the right answer. Because the left brainers in the world, which tend to be the movers and shakers in our world, they can't get there unless there's a logical path for them to follow. So that's why I made MBT the way I made it. It's a little hard for the right brainers to read, but it really was meant as really the only on-ramp for those that demand logical process in science.
That's why you have so many engineers and physicists and IT specialists and things like that following you. They love the logical process that you have in your book, My Big TOE.
Well, all of the people who have kind of discovered reality and understood how it works, they all used words that talk to their time and to their people. So here in the 21st century, it's about information, because we're just entering the information age. And sure enough, you can put this whole thing in terms of information, which now people are beginning to understand and realize that that's really a very excellent context for this discussion, is in terms of information systems, because that's what consciousness really is. It's an information system. You get input through your senses, you process that input, you compare it to memory, and from the right result, you make a choice. Well, that's exactly what information systems do. They take input, they process it, they compare it with memory, and they make choices. They do things, they take action. So consciousness as an information system is a natural metaphor, and it tends to work out very, very well when you take that metaphor and apply it to all that we know about reality and consciousness.
Well, thank you, Tom, for answering that ancient text question so beautifully. You've expounded on different aspects of these things, and I think you will reach a lot of people with this particular answer that you've given. Thank you. Love is the answer. If there's one way to discover this truth that Tom Campbell, physicist and consciousness expert, has concluded, it is through your own experience. Give yourself the gift of experiencing yourself. After all, Tom has stated so many times that if it's not your experience, it's not your truth. So learn to experience with Tom's Exploring Consciousness and Everything Paranormal program, and unlock those natural abilities for yourself. Discover why love is the answer. Binaural beats included to assist you. Details are in the description below. Thank you.
I and MBT Events hope you like this video. If you do, then you should consider being a Patreon member, because Patreon members get early access to our special content. You will also be able to get your questions answered by me in special Q&A sessions, and most importantly, your contribution as a patron member will enable us to produce the content that you're looking for. So thank you.